Alright, hello you guys. So today is our last day of notes for this unit on the judicial branch. So if you are cheering inside, go you, I guess. So the essential question that we're going to be answering in the notes, and really just in the lesson in general, is, again, how does our democracy protect the rights of individuals, specifically today, after a trial? So whether or not you have been convicted of a crime, which means that you have been found guilty, or if you have been acquitted of a crime, which means that you have been found not guilty of a crime, what are the rights that you are guaranteed after a trial? And that is our main focus for today. So your rights after a trial. Now the first thing that we have to understand is that when a defendant is found guilty, a judge is the one who usually decides the sentence or punishment. Now, most criminal law will set out like basic sentencing structures, but judges generally have considerable freedom in choosing the type, the length, and the conditions of the service. Some sentences might require time in prison. Maybe you are just fined. Maybe you are sentenced to community service. Or maybe you're just put on probation, okay? But these criminal sentences are going to serve different purposes. All right, so our three types of purposes, we have retribution, we have deterrence, rehabilitation, restitution, and incapacitation. So let's break these down. So retribution, basically, it's the idea that we're going to prevent crime by giving victims, or society, like a feeling of avengement. Like this person did something wrong and we are punishing them, and society as a whole can go, yeah, I feel good about this. The next one is deterrence. That's just simply, as a judge, if you are really tough on drug crime, and you really hammer people and send them to jail for a long time, maybe you could deter people or other people from committing a crime similar to that. The next one is, rehabilitation. And with this, our goal is to help the criminal change his or her behavior. The next one is restitution. That just prevents crime by punishing the defendant financially. A good example could be, a speeding ticket, or, here in Indiana, if you have your phone in your hand at any time, you can get a ticket of $500 if you're the one driving the vehicle. So that could be an example of restitution. And then the last one is incapacitation, and with this, the goal is to keep the criminal simply from threatening the safety of the community. Okay, so you don't let them have a chance to be in the community any longer. All right, so let's break down your actual rights now after a trial. So the first right that you have is the ex post facto clause. And what this says, it's a clause that's, specifically in the Constitution. And what it does, this is pretty cool, it prevents the government from punishing someone for doing something that was not a crime when the act was committed. And if you hear rumbling in the background, that is my cat running around in a bag. Give me just 1 second. Alright, hopefully he will not make any more sound. Alright, so like I said, it prevents the government from punishing someone for doing something that was not a crime when the act was committed. So, for example, if Mr. Zirkle sells a legal drug in 2012, and then in 2013, the state legislature makes that drug illegal, Mr. Zirkle, I cannot be punished for having sold the drug before it was illegal. Okay, so that is ex post facto clause. All right, let's look at your next major right that you have, and that has to do with the Eighth Amendment, which hopefully you remember. The Eighth Amendment. So basically, the Eighth Amendment, it just prohibits cruel and unusual punishment. And this is interesting because people often differ on what, is or what should be classified as quote-unquote cruel and unusual punishment. I mean, just kind of, being a little lighthearted, like, if I was subject to torture by the tickling of my feet for 20 years straight with no, breaks, for me, that's cruel and unusual, right? But maybe not for everyone else. On a more serious note, though, oftentimes one of the, more defining arguments for cruel and unusual punishment is what we call capital punishment, which is just the death penalty. Okay. Capital punishment used to be used for a wide variety of crimes, but today it's usually only reserved for murder and crimes against the nation, such as treason and espionage, which is just spying on the government to discover military secrets and things like that. We're not going to talk too much more about the death penalty because after the notes you're going to do an activity looking at the arguments for and against, and I'm going to let you make your own decision on whether or not you think that it's cruel and unusual. Alright, so your last really major right that you have after trial is known as double jeopardy. If you had me in U.S. history, we talked about double jeopardy with Emmett Till in the South in the 1950s. But what double jeopardy does, if you go to trial and you are put on trial for, let's just say you're put on trial for murdering Mr. Zirkle, okay? If you are found not guilty, okay, you cannot be prosecuted a second time for the same offense. And in the case of Emmett Till, if you remember, he was that young African-American boy in the 50s who was killed by two white men. The two white men were found not guilty of the murder, and, shortly thereafter, those two men came out to the media and they said, oh yeah, we killed him, definitely. Well, because of double jeopardy, you cannot try them again for that same offense. Now, you might think, okay, well, that's really bad, and in that case, in that instance, with that specific case with Emmett Till, it was horrific. The idea behind double jeopardy, though, is, for example, myself, I don't have a lot of money, and lawyers cost a lot of money. And so what it does is it prevents the government from actively coming after you time and time again. It's supposed to protect you from an overreaching police force and, more broadly, an overreaching government system. Okay. All right, guys, so that's it for our notes. Super, super short. We're clocking in about 8 minutes now, so when you are done with the notes and you have answered the 2 to 3 questions that are a part of this notes section, you can go ahead and move on to the next section of today's lesson, which will have you look at arguments or the pros and cons of using the death penalty in our country. See you later.